Welcome back, I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Autobahn USA in Westboro, Massachusetts, we're driving this manual Hockenheim Silver Metallic BMW M2 competition. I'm really excited about this. I love this car. I genuinely think the M2 is the best car that BMW makes right now, although the M2 CS clearly cooler, except for the fact that the price is very uncool, which makes the M2 competition even more appealing, especially on the used market. And I love the DCT, but I think this car, especially in its little segment, deserves to row its own gears. And I've got to say, I was so excited when BMW announced a few years ago that they were going to be putting the S55, the engine from the M3, into this car. The only problem, and I'll just get this out of the way, it still weighs 3,600 pounds. It's not a lightweight. Even though it's the little M, it's still a big girl. But I think this car deserved all the grunt that the M3 had, and unlike Porsche, who rarely allows the Cayman to be as fast as the 911, BMW was like, nah, just put the engine in it. Now, this one's limited a little bit at 405 horsepower, but it's still plenty. We're not gonna go over all the facts and figures. This car's been out for a little while. You know what it has. Today, we just wanna go see how it drives. I gotta say, it's pretty refreshing to jump in here and see 3 pedals. Whoa. Let's toss it in Sport Plus and see if that makes any difference. Nice gurgly exhaust. Let's take a look under the hood. Ah, yes, that's a familiar sight. Always good to see. Whoop. And even though I never really liked the appearance of this box, I always appreciated the giant carbon fiber hoop for the bracing. And they did not cheap out on these brakes. These are some pretty monster calipers, but the car does weigh 3,600 pounds. So even though it's the baby BMW, there's still plenty of room in the back. Let's set off and see how it drives. Definitely a familiar feel with this BMW shifter. BMW shifters are, how do I say this nicely? They're always a little soft. They're not like aggressive, sporty things, which is weird because we think of them as sports cars most of the time. But they kind of fit the difference between a daily driver and a sports car pretty well. Clutch, very forgiving. Think about BMWs that you're never gonna hit that 1-2 super hard. You wanna be gentle between those shifts. It's not a Camaro. That's a lot of power. Let's give a test of these brakes. Oh my goodness, that's not even all of it. That's not even all of it. There's a lot of brakes in this car. Oh boy, I like that. I like a car with a lot of brakes. Auto rev matching on the downshift. What I'm finding is I need to be more gentle on my upshifts. I need to be more patient. But despite its weight, it corners really flat. I feel like I've got loads of grip. Power builds so nicely throughout the rev range. Even though it's a turbo engine, we don't get this big surge. There's a bit of lag down low, and I feel like you'll probably notice that in the manual more than you'll notice it in a DCT car, because the transmission isn't going to be able to hide that, whereas a DCT car can just drop you down 3 gears like that and it's gone. There's no lag. But in the manual, you are going to feel that if you're starting your acceleration kind of below 3,200 RPM. But I've got to say, this is a pretty honest 400 horsepower. That's no joke. Super easy shifts. Let's see this turning radius. Impressive traction control system for sure. This should be just clawing the rear tires off the car. I'm in Sport Plus mode as far as I can tell. I'm not turning off traction, but it's putting it all down, and it's really not giving me much slip. Is there an option that would give you like MDM mode? I'm not so certain. You can comment below. But yeah, this doesn't give me much slip. It's keeping me right in line. Oh no, E39 down. It's still turning quite a few revs at highway cruising speeds, but nothing as crazy compared to my E92. So 3,000 RPM, we're at like 82 miles per hour. That's not terrible. This is something that I can easily daily. And as far as the suspension is concerned, while yes, it's stiff, it's not jarring, and it's not intrusive or uncomfortable, there is a bit more road noise than I would have anticipated. But I mean, you know, maybe if that lack of insulation gives me more engine noise, that's not so bad. While the S55 isn't exactly known for its beautiful note, it's not bad. And it is characteristically BMW as an inline six. Let's find our way through these potholes. Can feel traction limiting me. There's a lot of grip here, but my goodness, the brakes give you confidence to use the power. I'm kind of surprised at the pads they gave the car. They're aggressive. Most street pads, even on like M cars or exciting cars, are pretty weak. They're the kind that you just know are going to liquefy. They bite smoothly so as not to upset the driver. This is not. These feel a little racier than I was anticipating, and I'm pretty surprised that BMW put these on the car. Despite the competition badge, the M2 competition is still going to be a car of many compromises. It's going to be heavier than the track car that you dream of, but it still has plenty of grip. And it needs to be a daily driver for people. This is one of those one-size-fits-all cars. BMW isn't anticipating that you're buying an M2 competition as your Sunday driver. They're anticipating that you're going to drive it every single day. It's going to go to work, and it's going to go to the track. Because of that, just like the E92 M3, there's compromises, meaning that when I get on a racetrack in my E92 M3, I instantly recognize its weight. It's a big kid. It's a big kid. It's 3,600 pounds. This is 3,600 pounds, and it's not lighter than the comparable F80 M3. So what are you getting out of the M2 that you're not getting in the M3? Well, you reduce the practicality, because in M3 you can have 4 2-doors. I would option for a 4-door F80 for certain. There's just nothing better to look at. But with the M2 you get this shorter wheelbase. So that means that you've increased the dartiness and how nimble the car can be. But then comes the big question, DCT or manual? And I don't feel particularly swayed one way or the other. I can see the benefits of either, although the weight savings in a manual car could be worth it. Granted, doesn't matter, it's pretty negligible when the car already weighs 3,600 pounds. But if the purpose of it is to be a lovely driving experience, am I getting like the point buy right now? Thank you. Not the grabbiest clutch. I think it's probably that clutch delay valve that's doing it. It's not the clutch, it's the clutch delay valve. Yeah, that's why you've got to be a little gentle with these things. And that's why I think everybody goes and modifies them slightly the second they get a manual BMW, because then they're a little more tactile. There's something about it. But overall, this is a really lovely package. Personally, I would like my next daily driver to be a manual. I always daily drove manuals. The M3 is my first non-manual car. And I find myself, I don't know, I don't want to say out of practice, but there's definitely something that happens when you drive a manual constantly every single day. You just get better at it. It's like playing an instrument. And there's definitely like clunky things that I've done since buying that car when I get into a manual car that I'm just like, I've never done that before. That's so bizarre. And it's because I'm not forced to drive it. So in real world, is this ride quality something that you're going to want to live with all day, every day? Lover's Lane. I could never live on a street called Lover's Lane. It's a lovely street, it is, but do you really want to live on a street called Lover's Lane? The ride quality isn't bad. It's sporty, and I mean that in a careful way. It's stiff, but it's not jarring. I'm not feeling every single bump, careening through the cabin, but you are going to feel everything. It's not a luxury car. I don't think anyone's fooled by that. I don't think anyone's buying this car for its luxury. The only thing I think is a little too insulated is the steering. I think having this EPAS system tuned the way it is, while it's not bad, there's worse, it definitely separates me from the world just a little more than I want. And you'd think that that would be better. Now, it is better than the old days of like the original M235i's. I really, really, really dislike those steering racks, or the steering feel, I should say. This is fine. It is. It gets the job done, and I'm not uncomfortable with it. I can tell when things are going awry with the front end, but I always feel like there's just a hint missing. Now, on the flip side, that's a godsend when you're daily driving a car like this, because when you have a really communicative rack, it means you're getting sensory overload. And if you're just coming home from work and you just want to get home, the less the better sometimes. Just has so much grunt up top. You can tell it's shorter. I mean, you can absolutely tell that the wheelbase is shorter in a corner, but you also can tell that it still weighs quite a bit. There's traction control keeping me in line. Yeah, I'd love to bring this out to a racetrack and put it on some like legitimately sticky rubber, some Nankangs or some Nitto NTO1s. This thing is a hoot. Well then, is this guy just gonna kill us? We've got the grunt for it. So like any car with a manual gearbox, I think you get to experience the character of an engine a little better. And I feel like this being my first S55 manual, I'm experiencing the S55 in a way that I never really have before in a DCT. That's a beautiful thing. As for the actual gearbox, this is a nice box. It's not perfect. It's a little rubbery, but that's very typical of BMW. But it is better, however, than what I typically remember in an E92 manual. And oh, I just love the handling characteristics of this car. Big thanks to the McGovern Auto Group here at Autobahn USA in Westboro, Massachusetts for letting me play around with this thing. God, I really do like the manual M2 competition. Thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thank you to the Patreon supporters who make this content possible. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one. To me, this would be the car that I would potentially replace my E92 with as a daily driver. The biggest advantage of this car is not only like modern safety features and being a little more rigid, but the fact that it has all this torque down low that the S65 just does not have.